Also, thanks to President Macron for his contributions to today's program. I'm honored to be here on behalf of the Trump administration as we continue our unprecedented campaign to combat terrorist financing. Months before this conference began, in 2018, President Trump enshrined in doctrine what the United States had long been reminded in practice. Economic security is national security. Now in his second term, President Trump has restored this principle to its rightful place at the center of American strategy. Our economic statecraft, again, mirrors the might of our military and the strength of our commitment to countering terrorism in all its forms. Of course, the United States of America is hardly alone in facing the scourge of terrorism, especially from Iran. Yet too often we seem to be alone in our resolve to thwart it. As President Trump brings renewed vigor and focus to this fight, crushing the threat of terrorism compels all of you to step up and join us in rooting out financing that sustains it, from shell companies that are embedded within Europe to shadow banking networks that lurk across the Middle East and drug cartels across the Western Hemisphere. For at their core, sanctions are not acts of aggression, they are instruments of peace. Their purpose is not to condemn nations or people to indefinite isolation, but to create the conditions that can hasten a change in behavior. So if we are serious about no money for terror, then there must also be no room for excuses. For our part, no adversary has felt the force of America's economic statecraft more ruinously than Iran. Through economic fury and the maximum pressure campaign we've restored at the offset of this administration just over 1 year ago, the United States has imposed a financial stranglehold on the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. Treasury has deprived the Iranian regime of revenue for their weapons programs, terrorist proxies, and nuclear ambitions. We have disrupted tens of billions in the regime's projected oil revenue. We have taken actions to freeze nearly $500 million in regime-linked cryptocurrency and disrupted hundreds of billions in Iran's illicit financial flows. And we have intensified our crackdown on Tehran's shadow banking networks. As the regime confronts the wreckage of its military, Treasury will remain relentless in our pursuit to constrict the network of vessels, intermediaries, and buyers through which Iran exports both its oil and malevolence. Now, central to the success of economic fury is Treasury's modernized sanctions architecture, because as our adversaries adopt and innovate, so must we. To sharpen national security outcomes, Treasury is tailoring our sanctions program for the 21st century. We are reviewing outdated and obsolete designations to help financial institutions focus on the most sophisticated terrorist financial sanctions evasion schemes. Sanctions should not linger so long that their intended effects create unintended consequences. The most effective actions are aggressive, targeted, with defined timelines to drive specific effects. Sanctions are meant to change behavior, not punish populations. Sanctions left in place for years with no visible and tangible changes in behavior can have generational impacts that are nearly impossible to predict. Any sanctions the U.S. Treasury deploys today are carefully monitored and adjusted to ensure that they achieve our specific objectives. That is the standard that President Trump has set, and it is the standard that Treasury will continue to uphold. We saw this with the President's historic actions with Syria, and we are witnessing it anew as the United States guides Venezuelans to prosperity following decades of repression. Our approach will maintain agility to maximum effectiveness. As the United States targets the financial networks that enemy actors use to perpetrate terror, we trust that your participation here today reflects a readiness to stand with us in full. That will require, for example, our European partners to join the United States in taking action against Iran by designated financiers and unmasking its shell and front companies, shuttering its bank branches, and dismantling its proxies. It will require those of you from the Middle East and Asia to root out Iran's shadow banking networks and networks of ship transportation obfuscation. And it will require our partners around the globe to respond with force to the array of terrorists that we face, from Hezbollah to the Sinaloa cartel. As threats move across boundaries, our unity of purpose must transcend every border. And in short, if you share our fury about Iran's destabilizing agenda, terrorists seeking to hold the global economy hostage, drug cartels poisoning our communities, and threats to innocent lives, then now is the time to join the United States in moving aggressively. Let us work together to translate the spirit of this conference into a commitment that endures well beyond it. Let us proceed with the recognition that peace is preserved not by sentiment alone, but by those willing to defend its foundations. And let us deny our adversaries the one thing on which they count most, that those of us assembled in this room will grow weary in our vigilance before they do. With that, I will now turn it back to our host so that we can begin with the first panel of today's meetings. Thank you, and enjoy today's conference.